What's going on, guys? Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video I'm going to do a real quick video on how we can make some money with DFS in NFL Week 1. Okay, so the first thing I want to look at for NFL Week 1 for DFS purposes is off-season or preseason injuries. So DraftKings put out their pricing for every player probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and with that we've had some injuries during training camps or preseason. And now the number 2, for example, number 2 running back might move up to the starting role, and they might be priced at a number 2 or a number 3 price. Or for example, a QB might have won the job out of training camp, and they might be priced down at $5,000 on DraftKings. So we're going to look to take advantage of these pricing errors. They're not really errors because they were released before the injuries, but for NFL DFS Week 1, we can take advantage of these salaries, the value there. But then there's another thing that I also want to talk about, and that is fading those players, certain players. So you want to find a couple players, maybe even just one player who you think will be really highly owned, maybe a running back who's very cheap, who you think will be maybe 30% owned, maybe 40% owned. And if you don't think that player is going to break out and have a really huge game, maybe take a risk on fading that player. So find maybe the 1 or 2 player that you think will be very highly owned. Maybe the pricing is completely off. Everybody's talking about this player, and maybe just have the balls to just fade that player, and hopefully it works out for you in Week 1. So that's one way to do it. So we want to take advantage of some of that pricing, but we also want to fade some of those players as well. Number 2 is going to be take advantage of some coaching changes. So look at some coaching changes in the offseason. Maybe defensive coordinator got fired, so maybe you think a certain team's going to have a better defense this year. Maybe you can take their defense on DraftKings. Maybe they're cheap because they had a bad defense last year. Maybe a team got a new head coach. Whatever it is, take a look at some new coaching and try to figure out how that's going to come into play for Week 1 of the NFL season. Number 3 is going to be to take a look at some NFL rookies coming in who are going to win starting jobs in the training camps in the preseason. So find some rookies that a lot of casual fantasy players won't know of, and some of these players can have big breakout weeks even in Week 1. Usually it takes a couple weeks for some of these rookies to have big breakout weeks, but sometimes in Week 1 or Week 2, these guys will break out for huge games. So try to find the rookies that we can take advantage of. Maybe it's just a couple of rookies on defense that are really good players and that might help a team's defense improve, but maybe it's a player like a quarterback or a receiver who can really put up some big DraftKings points for us. So take a look at some NFL rookies in Week 1. Number 4 is going to be to dig deep and find 1 or 2 teams, preferably offensive units on these teams that you think are going to do really well that no one's really talking about. Maybe they were bad offenses the last couple years, but you think they made some key changes this year, or you just have a good feeling that some players on that offense are going to break out and have a big year. And we want to catch those in Week 1 or 2 or 3 before everyone else catches on. So really dig deep and try to do some research and find a couple of underdog offenses, so teams that like no one's really talking about, offenses that aren't usually known to put up big numbers, or certain players that aren't known to put up big numbers, but maybe they've trained really hard in the offseason, maybe they just went through like a sophomore slump, whatever it may be. Just teams that are going to break out and offenses that are going to break out that can put together some good stacks for you for Week 1. So those are my 4 quick tips. I know they weren't too in depth or anything, but I hope they helped you guys, and I hope you win some money in NFL Week 1. Cheers.